really completely screw themselves out of seeing an opportunity. And that's what's happening here. If you're sitting around and you're listening to these people that say Bitcoin will just be another investment, Bitcoin will just be another thing in the world for people to buy, you don't understand psychology, you don't understand how ego plays into it, you don't understand how these things affect the price and value of an asset. And that's what I want to talk about today. I just got out the shower because I was thinking about this, getting more and more pissed off because people don't understand, like, the opportunity that you have between now and when what I'm about to describe hits is running out. There is a time limit on it. In fact, I personally think there's a time limit on how long anything I say on YouTube or Twitter will be valuable. I don't think I'll be around within 5 to 7 years. I don't think there'll be any point because it will be over for the average person. That's why I'm trying to be as aggressive as possible to get this message out there. In order for me to do that, I need you to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're hurting the mission here. Please do that, because the faster you subscribe, the faster the algorithm realizes that this information needs to get out to people and it pushes it in front of them. So please do that if you haven't already. But the real point of this video is most people don't understand how the purchasing of prime assets work. Most people can comprehend how the purchasing of a random house works, right? Like a random single family home. Most people can get their head around how that actually works. But they cannot get their head around how the selling process or the buying process of a prime piece of real estate works. And I'm talking about like a beachfront property in Malibu, or an apartment at One Hyde Park in London, or whatever these special buildings are around the world in your city that everyone wants to be at, like being at the Trump Tower in New York, for example, right? That's a prime piece of property. So, you know, most people don't understand these things because they've never been privy to these things, and therefore they will never understand what will happen to Bitcoin soon enough. Right? Because Bitcoin has true scarcity. The only reason these assets, this paranoia of buying starts in these prime pieces of property is because there is actual scarcity. If this property that comes up in Malibu on the beachfront goes to someone else, I'm going to have to wait 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, until another one of those properties shows up on the market. So I need to get one if I want to be part of that club, that community. I own a beachfront property in Malibu, etc., etc. So people are really misunderstanding how this works, right? When you're looking, at one of these prime pieces of real estate, for example, there's probably less than 50 buyers in the world willing to execute on that property, and the realtors know exactly who they are, for example, right? And when you're selling a prime piece of property, you're really playing to the ego of the buyer. You're not playing to the rational investment making decision of the buyer, because the rational investor will go buy 200 units of a single family homes, or 200 apartment units, and focus on increasing the cash flow of that unit to increase the value of that. That's a completely different market. That's what a stock is. Right? When we're talking about scarcity here, we're talking about something transcending the average because it has true scarcity. So, for those buyers of that prime piece of real estate in Malibu, for example, money is not the issue, right? The issue is the desire to own that specific piece of property. That's what the issue is, because it's about scarcity. I'll keep drumming that into your mind. It's about scarcity. Scarcity is the actual asset. Right? So money's not the issue. It's about scarcity. There are kudos points, which is basically the normal people like us would call that douchebaggery points, right? Like, oh, look at this douchebag says he owns that property or this or that watch or this, that, and the other. Like, but that's real. That's actually real, right? There's kudos points when your friend owns a specific piece of property or a specific watch and you don't. Right? That pisses me off. That pisses people off. It's just like, oh, why does he get one and I don't? Yeah, it's that childish on that level, right? So how it works is this, right? Let's say that property goes on the market and it's $30 million for this Malibu beachfront property. We call the first buyer and he says, I'll take it for 28, thinking he's going to get a deal. The next one comes in and realizes that he knows who the first buyer is, and he doesn't want the first buyer to own it. So he goes, you know what, I'll take it for 31. And then then you call as a seller, you call the third guy and say that there are two bids in at 28 and 31, and the third buyer is connected enough because the community is pretty small to know who's bidding on that property, and he realizes that he wants to be the one out of that group that owns that property, so he's going to offer 35 million for it. Right? The first buyer is now priced out because he can't afford 35 mil. And you just continue doing that with the 50 guys or 50 people or 50 families or whatever until you get to your final price. And now the final price lands at 37 million, which is 23% above the original asking price for a property that, people just want to say buy to say fuck you. That's it, right? It's ego. It's complete and utter ego that happens in this. And the same thing happens with watches. Same thing happens with everything else. It's the rarity of the asset drives the price. The scarcity of it drives the price, which means that the higher the price gets, in essence, the scarcer the asset gets. So therefore, people bid it up even more. And by the way, that person will probably buy that property and leave it empty. They're not moving into it. They're just doing it because they can say, hey, I own a piece of Malibu beachfront property. And similarly here, the crazy part is that while we're looking at, in this example, I'm using Malibu beachfront property, Bitcoin is infinitely scarcer than Malibu beachfront property. Because now it's not only the residents of Malibu, or the people who want to live in California, or the people in America, or the people who just want to park $30-something million into that property that are in the market. Bitcoin's everyone. Everyone's in the market. Everyone's playing this game, right? It is from the top to the bottom. You are now turning Bitcoin into a Veblen good. A Veblen good in economics is basically a good that as the price goes up, or as the price goes up, the scarcer it gets, and therefore it drives the price even up, right? The demand increases as the price goes up of this good. I just lost my tweet that I was reading from, right? So, that's what Bitcoin is, because there's true finality of scarcity. These people are trying to get into assets that give them scarcity. They want to say to people, I hold 1 Bitcoin. If you are listening to the 3 rules of Bitcoin every day and trying to get to 1 Bitcoin, you're going to be breathing such rare air in a very, very short period of time, because Bitcoin is pricing out different economic groups, right? It's now priced out the middle class. Next cycle, it will price out low single-digit millionaires. And you might think, okay, let's say Bitcoin gets to 100,000, right? How is it pricing out a low single-digit millionaire? Because someone who's worth 3 million has probably got that 3 million in property. They can't just sell 1 room in a property in order to get into Bitcoin. They have to sell the whole property, and they generally won't do that. Why? Because they're attached to the property. So they're attached to the investment. So as the price goes up, more and more demand is going to come into it, because it is seen as a scarce asset where you can breathe rarefied air and you can walk around saying, I own 1 Bitcoin. I know that the Bitcoin maxi thing is, you don't tell people how much you got, and you don't tell people this, that, and the other. The rich people don't give a fuck about that. They don't care about that, because their assets are secured, their assets are put into trusts, their assets are held in secure custody, and they can walk around shaking their dick around saying, I own 10 Bitcoin, I own 100 Bitcoin, I own this many, this, that, and the other. MicroStrategy now owns 158,000 Bitcoin. You think if they didn't give a shit, you think if they were worried about that, they would put that press release out? You think that would happen? There is a lot of broke mindset thinking that is about to be taken to the next level when it comes to Bitcoin, because of the market players coming into the market at this point. It's not the fault of anyone. People just don't know. When you buy a rare Patek Philippe, you want everyone to know, in a subtle way, not in a douchey way. You want everyone to know that you're the acquirer of that Patek Philippe, because it opens doors for you, right? There will be times where, in the next 20 years, there'll be times where people with 1 Bitcoin plus will be invited to special events that other people won't be invited to, right? Because you have access to liquid capital that can be flown around the world in a heartbeat and executed. It is a status product. It is a status investment. And there's only 21 million. And as imagine this, you buy 1 Bitcoin, now, and suddenly in I don't know, let's say 5 years time, somebody worth $20 million can't get one Bitcoin. You now have the higher status in that dick swinging club, right? And whether we want to say, "Yo, I'm going to take part in that" or not, that's just how life works. I don't care whether you take part in it or not. That's how life works. So, this is the most pristine asset, and the games that get played in real estate, in prime real estate, in watches, in art, it's all coming in. This is a sport for rich people. It's not even like, it's not even about the asset. It's just a sport. Like walking around saying, I own 1 Bitcoin, or I own 100 Bitcoin, or I own 1,000 Bitcoin. Imagine this right now. I can make this relatable right now. Imagine you walk into a room and someone says, oh yeah, I own 1,000 Bitcoin. Your perception of that person changes. That's exactly what will happen to people that say, I own 1 Bitcoin, because the price, they're about to be priced out. Millionaires, multi-millionaires are about to be priced out in the next 5 to 10 years. So you need to start thinking about Bitcoin very differently. The Hunger Games for Bitcoin start when the egos of the wealthy get involved and they start chasing this asset, right? Bitcoin is the most pristine asset with absolute finality of scarcity. It's not like one Hyde Park where give me 5 to 10 years and I'll build another building that can be called 1A Hyde Park, right? It's not about that. It's about actual scarcity worldwide, instant. Everywhere in the world is competing for this pristine asset, right? And I believe that when Bitcoin becomes $1 million per coin, there's actually going to be a rush of the wealthiest people to get just 1 Bitcoin when it becomes $1 million a coin. Until then, they're going to be like, we'll see what happens. It gets to $1 million mark, they're going to be like, I need to get one of those. That's all you want. You just need to be like, I need to get one of those. Bitcoin is very different to a traditional asset. It's not like a stock where they say, I want to allocate a little bit into Apple, a little bit into... That's what it is right now. It's about to turn into a Veblen good where it's got... I need to own it. The more the price goes up, the more I want to own it, because this is how the ego drives wealthy people, right? And of course, it's to do with the fact that Bitcoin is a great investment, but they don't need that. They're already rich. These people are already rich. It's not like Warren Buffett sitting around going, I need to get into Bitcoin at $1 million because I need to get rich. That's the mindset right now. I'm talking about these people. There is the desire to protect their wealth. There is the desire to say fuck you to the other rich people around them. And those two desires are the main driving forces of what's going to drive the price from this point as soon as an ETF is approved. They will say, I need to own 1 Bitcoin because when I walk into a party or a dinner party or this, that, and the other, I'm the only one with 1 Bitcoin. I know this sounds crazy to you guys that are listening. I know it sounds all douchebaggery. And when I was younger, I thought it was the same thing, but now it's not, because when I walk into a room full of my friends that collect Patek Philippe's and one of the guys has got a specific watch, everyone else is like, shit, I want that watch, right? So this is how the Hunger Games start, and it's always better to have an investment that is truly scarce. Scarcity is what drives the investment, and that's what Bitcoin provides. And so you're sitting here going, hey, maybe I'll just slowly DCA into this asset, when as soon as these guys wake up, they're going to come charging for this asset. You've got a limited time opportunity right now to secure as much of this asset as you can, because when they get going, it's gonna be literally like the Hunger Games. You just have to look at the chart of Tesla in 2019, 2020 and see what happened to that when everyone decided I need a piece of Tesla, right? These guys just want 1 Bitcoin to say fuck you. That's all it is. It's the same way as again, scarcity drives it and ego drives it. So you might be looking at it going, women that own Birkin bags, right? Hermes Birkin bags. I would much rather make a woman that takes her money and buys Birkin bags and Hermes special edition Birkin bags than Neverfull's Cartier bracelets, etc., etc. Because the woman who's taking her time and buying Birkin bags understands scarcity. That's why that product is for the wealthier class, and the Neverfulls and the Cartier bracelets are for the poor people, because the Birkin bags are understood to be a scarce asset. They'll leave the Louis Vuitton for the poor people, and they'll buy the Birkin bags for the wealthy people, because the scarcity is in a Birkin bag. Why? Because Birkin bags have outperformed normal real estate for the last 10 years. So scarcity is what drives the asset, and as that scarcity happens, they can still walk around and say, hey, oh look, I got a Birkin bag and I'm much more special than everyone else. That's what drives the value of the fucking Birkin bag, right? It's important to understand the ego side of what makes an investment and a price of something go up, because then you can understand what is coming for Bitcoin. So everyone is sitting around going, hey, just join the $10 a month DCA army, just do this, that, and the other, doesn't understand how serious this is getting. This is serious beyond belief. This is about to tap into the very primal Maslow's hierarchy of needs that people need to feel important. That's what Bitcoin is, because of the finality of the scarcity of the asset. And it's important to understand that, right? Because that is the real Hunger Games, right? When logic drains away and you get hungry and something in your spirit wants to survive and something in your body takes over, something else. It's not logic anymore. It is emotion. It is pure emotion. If I miss out of this thing, I'm no longer going to be relevant. That is what is coming for Bitcoin, right? The desire for status, position, family, like the status of your family takes over, and you start realizing the only way you can do that is by getting to one Bitcoin. That's what is coming for Bitcoin because of the scarcity of the asset. Because when that happens, what takes over is animal instinct of the wealthiest. And when that happens, you got no chance. You got no chance. They will buy up the Bitcoin faster than you can blink, and you will have absolutely zero chance. You'll be able to acquire some for sure, but right now is the moment where you have a chance to get to one Bitcoin, and you should absolutely take that opportunity and stop ignoring it and stop this whole DCA BS, etc., because you have one chance. One chance. Because it's actually scarce. And understand how the ego games work and take some fucking action. If you don't, not only will you regret it, if you plan on having a next generation, they'll regret it. And if they plan on having a next generation, they'll regret it. It's not like we're going to get a Bitcoin every generation. This is a once-in-a-species opportunity to own the single hardest asset humanity has ever created. Take this seriously, because the Hunger Games, the animal instinct of the wealthy, is about to flood into this market. And despite that, there are still only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulous.